Have you ever felt like the more you think, the more isolated you become, that the deeper you understand the world, the more distant others seem to grow? It's not just in your head. Society has always been uneasy around those who think profoundly, not because these thinkers are wrong, but because they see truths that others aren't ready to face. This discomfort is ancient. From Socrates to Galileo, from Nietzsche to Tesla, brilliant minds have been silenced, ignored, or ridiculed. Not because they lacked intelligence, but because their ideas forced society to confront uncomfortable realities. Take Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most brutally honest philosophers in history. He believed that intelligence, in fact, could be a curse, one that isolates those who see the world too clearly. But why does this happen? Why does society resist people who think differently? The answer is rooted in the human psyche. Think about it. When you're standing next to someone who's physically stronger, you don't necessarily feel bad about yourself. You admire their strength, maybe even feel motivated. When you meet someone who's wealthier, you might envy them, but it doesn't usually feel like a direct attack. But what happens when you encounter someone who is intellectually superior? Something strange occurs. Psychologists call this the mirror effect. A deep thinker doesn't just introduce new ideas, they reflect back the limitations of the people around them. This is uncomfortable, and it's often something people can't forgive. The mere presence of someone who thinks on a deeper level can make others feel inadequate, even if that deep thinker says nothing at all. But why is this the case? Why does intelligence more than anything else provoke such discomfort to understand this? Let's look at how our minds process different forms of superiority. When someone is stronger than us, we might see them as a leader or protector. When someone is wealthier, we might admire their success or aspire to be like them. These qualities, strength, wealth, beauty, are external. We recognize them, but they don't necessarily challenge how we see ourselves. Intelligence, however, operates differently. Intelligence isn't just a quality you admire. It's a mirror that reflects your own understanding of the world. We define ourselves by our ideas, beliefs, and how we make sense of things. When someone challenges these core beliefs, it feels like a personal attack. Like our very identity is being questioned. Instead of admiring deep thinkers, many people subconsciously resist them, not because the thinker is arrogant, but because their very presence forces others to confront their own limitations. This is why throughout history, thinkers who dared to question the status quo were often pushed to the fringes of society. Their ideas didn't just challenge the beliefs of the time, they threatened egos, and we as humans will go to great lengths to protect our egos from discomfort. Reflect on your own experiences. Have you ever tried to introduce a complex idea into a casual conversation, only to be met with blank stars or awkward silence? Have you noticed how people quickly change the subject when a conversation delves too deep? This isn't a coincidence, it's a defense mechanism. When people encounter deep thinkers, their minds enter a kind of self-preservation mode. Instead of engaging, they resist. Instead of being curious, they dismiss. This is why intellectuals, philosophers, and visionaries often find themselves isolated, not because they want to be, but because society pushes them away. Interestingly, research shows that confidence is often valued more than intelligence in social settings. People are naturally drawn to those who project certainty, even if their ideas are shallow. That's why charismatic leaders or motivational speakers, even with simplistic ideas, gain more influence than those who speak with nuance. History is filled with examples of leaders who built massive followings by telling people what they want to hear, by comforting them, not challenging them. Meanwhile, those who dared to question conventional beliefs struggled to find a broad audience. This paradox is profound. The deeper someone seeks the truth, the more disconnected they become from the majority. The mirror effect doesn't just reflect society's limitations, it exposes why society resists change in the first place. But if intelligence is so threatening, is there scientific evidence that people actually fear it? Modern neuroscience says yes. Studies show that when people feel intellectually inferior, their brains react with a heightened response in the amygdala, the region responsible for fear and threat detection. In simple terms, deep thinking doesn't just intimidate. It triggers a primal survival response. But why does intelligence trigger the same fear circuits as a physical threat? The answer lies in how our brains evolved. For most of human history, survival wasn't about being the smartest person. It was about being accepted by the group. Our ancestors thrived in social groups where social harmony meant safety. Being rejected by the group could mean isolation and death. This is why human brains are wired to prioritize social acceptance over intellectual pursuits. When someone enters a social setting with a highly intellectual presence, they unknowingly disrupt the tribal balance. Their ideas challenge the group's core beliefs, and that creates fear. This is where we see the real struggle. Socrates, for example, was condemned to death for encouraging people to think for themselves, for questioning societal norms. Even when he was given a chance to escape, he chose to drink poison rather than abandon his principles. His famous words, "The unexamined life is not worth living," remain a powerful testament to his belief in intellectual independence. His death sent a message. Society fears those who challenge its fundamental beliefs. Galileo similarly faced persecution for simply uncovering the truth. When he proved that the earth revolves around the sun, he shattered centuries of religious dogma. For this, he was labeled a heretic and forced to recant his findings. He was placed under house arrest, and his work was banned. Yet today we celebrate him as one of history's greatest scientists. This highlights a painful truth. Even the most undeniable truths will be rejected when they threaten the existing power structures. Nietzsche, too, was considered too radical. He challenged traditional morality, argued that society was built on comforting lies, and promoted the idea of creating one's own values. His ideas were too unsettling for his time, and he was dismissed as insane. Today, however, Nietzsche's philosophy shapes modern psychology and existentialism. His work on power, will, and morality continues to influence contemporary thought, proving that society often rejects deep thinkers in the present only to embrace them in the future. The life of Nikola Tesla is another tragic example. Tesla envisioned a world of free energy and wireless electricity, a world where technological advancements could revolutionize civilization. But those in power saw his ideas as a threat. Industrialists profited from selling electricity, so they shut down Tesla's vision. Despite his brilliance, Tesla died forgotten, penniless and alone, while others profited from his stolen ideas. These stories have one thing in common: the rejection of revolutionary thinkers, not because their ideas were wrong, but because they threatened the status quo. Intellectual progress often faces violent resistance because it challenges the very foundations of power. But this doesn't mean deep thinkers are destined for loneliness. It simply means they need to navigate society wisely. Not every space or person is ready for profound conversations. It's essential to save your most powerful ideas for those who truly appreciate them. You don't need millions to understand you, just the right ones. Seek out those who share your passion for deep thinking, whether in books, online, communities, or intellectual circles. The greatest thinkers in history found ways to make complex ideas accessible. Einstein said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Learn to communicate your depth without overwhelming others." As Schopenhauer once said, "Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see." Deep thinkers see the world differently. And while this may make some uncomfortable, it doesn't mean you should stop thinking deeply. Remember, society needs deep thinkers, even if it doesn't always know how to embrace them. So if you've ever felt like an outsider for your thoughts, remember you are not alone. Society may fear deep thinkers, but it is deep thinkers who push humanity forward. If this video resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever faced rejection for thinking deeply? Let's start a conversation. And if you want to dive deeper into the ideas of history's greatest minds, hit that subscribe button. We're just getting started.